Hi, this is Nate Schulte with a special edition of Discovering Battles with Nate. Reason why it's so special is because this is actually the week of Veterans Day and also the United States Marine Corps' birthday. Now, for those of you who are veterans and watching this, my heartfelt thanks to you. And this hat here I am wearing actually to honor the Marines because I happen to have two cousins that were in the Marines. And I also had a friend who was in the Marine Corps. And another reason why this is a special edition is because I am going to be talking about one of the biggest battles in United States Marine Corps history. Now, this battle was the Battle of Iwo Jima. Now, Iwo Jima took place on February 19th through March 26, 1945. Now, the two commanders of this battle was, for the Americans, it was General Holland Smith, and he actually had about 30,000 men that invaded Iwo Jima. But there were about 72,000 men involved with this battle. For the Japanese, it was General Tadamachi Hirabayashi, who had under his command 25,000 men. Now, Iwo Jima was very vital to the Japanese during World War II because whenever the B-29s did a bombing mission, they would always be picked up on radar or by Iwo Jima, and they were sent to Tokyo as a warning for that there were bombers on the way. And not to mention the fact bombers would get a lot of damage and they would not be able to refuel anywhere. So some of them would have to scatter out all over into the Pacific Ocean. And Iwo Jima was going to be very, very important for that kind of mission because then that way, with the captured airfields, the bombers had a place to safely land, and they were also able to repair themselves and also get the crew the medical attention they were going to need. And casualties were high with them because there was no fighter escorts too. Because fighters did not carry as much fuel as the bombers did. Because fighters were smaller, but they didn't carry like I said, as much fuel, or a lot of fuel was not required to keep those birds flying. Right? And another thing to remember is with Iwo Jima, there was no vegetation, so because of all the other previous battles, there was vegetation and there was also trees and the jungle to hide in. As for Iwo Jima, there wasn't any. There was nothing but sulfur and volcanic ash. And according to some testaments from the veterans there, it was so hot that you could actually heat up a K-ration right on the sand. And not only that, and something else to remember is that there was bombings going on for about 6 months to try to bomb this island because they knew pretty soon it was going to be very, very important battle that was going to happen here. Now, what was to happen? Before we proceed, I want to state something for the record here. The green guys here leading up is what the invasion happened. And then the gray Civil War guys is the 4th Marine Division. The blue Civil War guys is the 5th Marine. And then the red is the 3rd. But that will be for later on. Anyways, there were tunnels and being dug around because this was a sulfur mining area. And what happened is Hirabayashi wanted to make sure that he had enough men fighting on there. And there was also, they were going to use these tunnels from the mines, the sulfur mines, to use so that way his men could get from point A to point B with the tunnels. And that was going to make it harder, especially for Mount Suribachi here. Because with Mount Suribachi, there was artillery that they could use right down onto the beaches here and hopefully they would inflict more casualties onto the Americans or the Marines, and then the Marines would just give up, but that wasn't the point, or that didn't happen. Anyways, as I stated, Suribachi was filled with pillboxes and also tunnels. Now, what happened was, on February 19th, after 6 months of bombing, and with the naval aviators bombing this island since December, what happened was 6 battleships, 4 heavy cruisers, and 1 light cruiser for 3 days pretty much shelled the entire island, because they were trying to inflict as many casualties as they could on the Japanese. But because of the tunnels, there was still plenty of Japanese that were gonna have to be fight. After 3 days of bombardment, the invasion began. And it began with very light resistance, but afterwards it increased because the Japanese had infantry, snipers, artillery, while Americans had infantry, flamethrowers, and artillery, but they also had some tanks that would later on land on the battle. Now, the plan was that the 5th Marines would land on Red 1, Red 2, and Green 1. So in this area here, then they were going to go up, take this airfield, first airfield, and then after that was secured, they were going to climb up on Mount Suribachi, and then, capture that, and then do another turnaround here, and then they were going to go over to the east side to where Kitano Point is. However, for the 4th Marine Division, they would land on Yellow 1, 2, and Blue 1 and 2, and then they were going to go over and they would also help assist with the Suribachi. But then they were going to go over onto the west side of the island here, and they were going to secure the northern part of the island here. And then they were going to go to east here to Tayashiwa Point here, and they were going to secure that. But there was also going to be another division there. So at 6:30 a.m. on February 19th, the bombardment ceased, and that's when the invasion began. LSTs brought in light tanks here, and also supplies. But the Marines were sitting ducks on the beach because, according to most of the veterans, they would go 1 step and then they would slip 2 steps and they would have to do it again. Because of the sulfur, it was kind of slippery and hard for them to climb up. And that made it more difficult for them to get pretty much off of the beach and onto being able to attack. And not only that, but with the Japanese firing down on them, that was going to make it even harder, because while fighting, you also had to get up there. Some of them would use, bomb crates that were used from bombs as cover later on. All right, anyways, by the end of the first day, they were at the edge of Airfield 1. As you can see, these blue guys here, this is pretty much as far as they got after day 1. But then, after that, Shermans landed on the island, and that Airfield 1 was actually secured. So the Sherman tanks actually helped out. And then artillery had to fire upon Mount Suribachi. And yes, that is where that picture was taken. On February 23rd, the flag raising on Mount Suribachi, as you can mainly see right in here, took place. And needless to say, 40 men who carried the flags and tried to make that image come alive, out of 40 men, only 4 left the island unhurt. The photo was taken by Joe Hassenthal, and many people said that the men were identified. However, due to a YouTube video that I saw, there is actually some corrections for this. The men who rose the flag on Mount Suribachi were Ira Hayes, Harlan Block, Mike Strank, Franklin Sausley, Harold Schultz, and Harold Keller. But before the battle was over, Harlan Block, Franklin Sausley, and Mike Strank were killed. They were killed over around here in this area here after the photo was taken. And like I said, it took them 36 days to secure this whole thing. But after the flag was raised at Mount Suribachi and the morale was lifted back home because of this photo, the plan went forward as planned. Like with the 5th Marines going over here, they ended up fighting over in what's called Bloody Gorge. The 4th Marines would do their objectives by making it to what is called the meat grinder with Turkey Knob, Hill 382, and the amphitheater over by where the 2nd airfield was. But there was another division. These red guys here are the 3rd Marine Division, and they would end up fighting over to where the 3rd airfield was, and also Cushman's Pocket. And that was by the end, pretty much the whole thing was secured by pretty much after 36 days of fighting on March 26, 1945. The casualties for this battle were, for the Americans, there was 6,821 killed, 19,217 wounded, and 2,648 suffered combat fatigue, and a total of 28,868 men. And then for the Japanese, there were 21,000 killed and another 1,083 POWs. Okay. All right, some of my sources for this battle are History.com, the men who rose the flag on Iwo Jima, along with HistoryHit.com, who were the Marines that rose the flag on Iwo Jima, and then Iwo Jima Flag Raiser Corrections YouTube video. But the other sources I have are Flags of Our Fathers by John Bradley, and then Hal Buell's Uncommon Valor, Common Virtue, and then we have World War II by H.P. Wilmot, Robin Cross, and Charles Messenger, and then Iwo Jima, 36 Days of Hell, the true story. I hope you enjoyed this battle of discovering battles with Nate. And like I said, for those of you who are veterans, my heartfelt thanks to you for your service to our country. Thank you. Bless you all.